It also felt like they were ripping off some Super Robot IP that aren't owned by Toei. Would you know anything about that, girls? We opened this week with some of the most extreme upskirt shots I've ever seen, in rapid succession no less. Seriously, weird way to open your Sunday morning anime. But yeah, we were continuing right from where we left off last week, with Uta legit giving chase to Zukun Kiss, while her poor friends would have to spend this whole episode helping their leader indulge in her simping. Anyway, the 6 Rangers managed to escape by shrinking down. Yeah, apparently they could just revert back to their fairy forms at any time, which would explain how they managed to spend at least a few nights away from Uta's house, because if they were their full-sized human forms, they would probably have to pull a Cure Earth. This is what happens when you try to be a magical girl and you're clearly a grown woman. I mean, yes, I know it's ageist and everything, but that's just how this industry is. This also does bring up a few other questions, but we'll get more into that in a bit. Anyway, to more easily track down her Oshi, Uta tried to draw Zukun, and to her credit, she did a better sketch than I ever could. Though, more importantly, I did like how Uta immediately went to Purian's camera afterwards, showing that her fairy friend was at least her second priority. Yes, finding a friend should be a top priority, but she's caught up in the fandom web, so just give her a little leeway. Did the luck also take away their language comprehension? Because now all of a sudden they're Pokemon. Like, honestly, I did think that they were just going to take away their ability to talk in fairy form, which might have added an interesting but tragic layer to their story, but no, it's just for this one scene that they forgot to talk for whatever reason. I don't know. Later, Uta did at least share her concern over Purian with her friends, who also, and probably more than their actual leader, were concerned about her. In fact, Kokoro provided her own theories as to what might have happened to them, like how the queen might have finally intensified her punishments. Okay, did Nabashin storyboard for this show too? Because at this point, everything's just gonna turn into Punipoi Foemi, and then, oh boy. But yeah, that Afro freak wasn't involved in this episode, though I swear some of the stuff here felt like they were snoring the same pixie dust as the Excel Saga staff. Case in point, when Mikoto showed up and introduced a reporter, who surprisingly wasn't named Moscow because I guess they already completed that hat trick. However, Kijima here did make another reference that would pretty much be her whole personality. I know. Why is this franchise so obsessed with this particular season? I mean, you got the head writer of Gojuja working on your show, so why not reference that more? I say this because this lady saying boom 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 over and over did get legit annoying after a while. Like, even Bundorio kept it to a minimum. Anyway, they tried to help her find Zukun Kiss. In the process, she revealed that she was probably one of the few characters who actually bothered to point out the monsters of the week, which the Precure tried to cover up for some reason. I mean, it's not directly tied in with their secret identities or anything, so wouldn't it be safer if the general populace was a little more aware of them? Still, on that note, our heroines realized something rather important about their prospective new teammates. Y'all need to retake Magical Girl 101. Still, this did lead to my favorite joke of the episode, when Uta suggested that they had to find Zukun Kiss to warn them about protecting their secret identities, to which Kokoro correctly pointed out that she was just using this as an excuse to track down her Oshi.
I can't help but notice this gigantic explosion right behind me for no apparent reason.
Anyway, rather than taking out her earlier sketch, Uta figured that she should try to draw Zukun's civilian form, and to her credit, she drew it better than her first sketch on her smart screen phone, which is legit impressive as those things are impossible to draw on. And hilariously enough, they actually found someone who matched up with her picture. I mean, obviously it wasn't her, because they just showed Purian flying around, but I do appreciate this little punchline. Oh, come on, they're already doing the Netflix adaptation for the show? Also, weirdly enough, this character didn't have a credit or anything, which just makes me wonder what the hell were they trying to hide by not naming them or their VA. But yeah, as all of this was going on, Prune was just kind of aimlessly floating around with a monochrome ribbon to very obviously symbolize her lost memories. Though interestingly, not only were Marion's ribbons still colored, she also seemed to be pretty much the same character with all of her memories and still as clingy as ever to her Neitama, which yeah, in fairy form she went back to that. It makes me wonder what she sacrificed to the lock, if anything. Like, was the payment all on Prune, or was the lock forcing her to maintain her amnesia? Honestly, I hope that she had to pay something, otherwise this line would have been kind of pointless and insincere. It would also make Meryl kind of unlikable, as she'd be taking advantage of an amnesiac Prune.
You sit on a throne of lies.
Anyway, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of wish the fake Zukyun had been the victim of the week, even though it was obviously going to be Kishima, who of course produced the camera monster, which just feels kind of redundant when we already got a camcorder. But yeah, from here, the episode's animation just took a major step up, starting from Uta sniffing around like a bloodhound. Our ideal superheroine, everyone. Thankfully though, it didn't last too long, as we did get another good character moment when she managed to spot Prune and kind of ironically dropped her search for Zukyun. Again, I just like affirmation of Uta realizing what's actually important in reuniting with her friend, even as she was completely caught up in her whole Oshi phase. Not to mention, it was good to see her have to confront both when Prune tracked down the Kurai Yaminda, and she and Maron had no choice but to transform in front of everyone. And with that, we got the transformation sequence for the two, which, I'm gonna be honest, I think it's just okay. Like, don't get me wrong, on a technical level, it is very impressive, with some very smooth animation, and even some very clever visual bits, like this freeze frame here, where it looks like they're the yin and yang symbol, to really highlight the duality of these characters. However, I also feel like I have to pause a lot, because oh my god, the sequence is way too fast, to the point that it becomes disorienting for me. I think this was done by Nishiki Utoka, who does tend to do some more fast-paced sequences that I usually am able to keep up with, in spite of how much the character just moves around the screen. However, I think he was the wrong animator to call in because there are two characters here going at about 100 miles an hour. As a result, I'm not sure where my line of sight should be focused on, and I legit feel like I'm getting motion sickness by just watching this. Again, it's not bad, as I do at least like the end of the sequence, where it slows down to let the music actually match up with the final touches of their transformation. That's actually really clever, and I want to see more sequences do that. I also want to see more of the human civilian forms because, yeah, they're really cute. I mean, god, how many actual black-haired Cures have we seen, aside from, ironically enough, Cure White? Anyway, in spite of the insane amount of Sakuga that we especially got during this latter half of the episode, it unfortunately wasn't really relegated to the fight, which was mostly just a stock animation and then finisher. However, my story leniency rule did apply here, as we did get some good character development that established the struggle that these two were going through for the sake of their wishes. Just these little bits of, I guess, Prune being confused as to what she was even protecting spoke volumes, and I am looking forward to seeing more stuff like this very soon. Also, hopefully, we won't actually have to see much of their interview with Kishima, because after this episode, I feel like throwing away my Boom Boom Changer. Still, the episode did end very strongly, with Prune not even recognizing Uta, as while the wish was making her protect Cure Idol, it wasn't actually cluing her into who that was, or even why she was so important to her. This left Uta rightfully in shock, as Oshi's and all that crap didn't really matter anymore, as her close friend was still very much missing. This was a really well done episode, with some predictable but still really good plot progression. Yeah, I think even though we might have seen a lot of this stuff coming, it did at least deliver on the emotions of the characters, especially at the end there. Though I will say, the real standout of this episode was the animation, which throughout was really high quality, even when it was being a tad bit extra. By far, this is one of the most energetic episodes of this whole series, which I see mostly as a good thing, as led to some good comedy like the fake Sukyun and some of Uta's freakouts. And of course, it also led to some good emotional scenes like the not-so reunion with Prune. That said, it also led to some obnoxious moments like Kishima going way too over the top, and yeah, Uta's simping was becoming a bit much by the end. Thankfully, at least that latter point will likely stop for the most part, as now we can get into the actually interesting stuff of the Sixth Ranger arc, as Uta has to deal with her amnesiac fairy friend. There's just a lot of interesting directions that they could take the story, in particular in regards to how to deal with Meron, who right now is kind of an antagonist, who does have some good intentions, though I'd argue it's not the best ones for Prune. I'm also really curious as to what she even sacrificed to the lock, and if it is nothing, how they'll write around it, which at least could lead to a good moral quandary out of it. How much does Prune actually matter to Uta? Is it enough to give up both a powerful ally and Oshi, as she'll likely lose her powers if her memories come back? There's a lot of good directions and quandaries that they could incorporate into the story, but we'll save talking about that for another day, as overall, this was a really good episode with plenty of developments, and for the most part, some good comedy, other than that damn Booner. Seriously, I'm gonna go rewatch the first episode Gojuju just to see the dead Bundorio after this episode. Thanks for watching, and if you don't really care for the paparazzi, well, at least they're not in our videos. We've got something new coming out almost every day, and also have some new projects in the works right now. Look forward to Princession Orchestra, and until then though, farewell for now my friends, and why do I keep getting notifications of celebrities doing stupid stuff? Oh right, because it's a day ending in Y.